application of the Kaneland Community Unit School District 302. We would like to inform all board meeting attendees that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. Please rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call.
Mrs. Farber.
Here.
Mrs. Junk.
Here.
Mr. Carey.
Here.
Mr. Lawler.
Here.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Here.
Mr. Rivas.
Here.
Mrs. Witt.
Here. All right, there's a quorum with 7 members present. Would anyone like to move something down from the consent agenda to new business? No? Seeing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second? Roll call.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Farber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0, and we'll move on to superintendent salutes.
Yes, I have two. I'll introduce Mrs. Maris to come up in a second. But first, I'd like to just share the names for the District 302, Kaneland's District 302 Educator of the Year nominees. As you know, in December, they're nominated, and then in May, Friday, May 3rd, they have the actual banquet. But our nominees this year from John Stewart is Mrs. Purnell. From Harder here is Mr. Hewells for middle school teacher. High school teacher is Miss Sandy Filetto. Early career educator is also here from Harder, Cindy Campisi. For student support personnel, it is Mrs. Stephanie Unger, KBK, for her work as an RTI math interventionist. And then for paraprofessional, which is under the educational service personnel category, is Miss Sue Sensor. So those are our nominees for Educator of the Year. And again, more information will follow. You may see some publications go out in a press release, and those of you that are supporters or know these teachers, part of what they do is put together a packet of letters of support. So if you've happened to had any of these teachers or worked with any of these teachers and want to submit a letter, that information will be in the press release. So congratulations to those teachers and support staff members, and if you don't mind giving them a round of applause, please. I'd like to thank President Sparber and Mrs. Good on Friday, and then today we're able to go around to all the different staff members, nominees, and congratulate them for their work. So that's always a fun thing to do. And then second, Mrs. Maris. She is going to take a few minutes and with Mr. Rollman recognize some of our students and some of our programs.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, we appreciate you guys allowing us an opportunity to come and share with you this evening. It was a great start to our school year, and it's been a joy to have Mr. Rollman here with us on the admin team. And I thank you students and families for coming out this evening. It's good to celebrate with you guys and to be reminded of why we all do what we do, because it's about you guys. So thanks for coming out. So I will pass out Mr. Rollman's packets and let him go ahead and share with you.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much. I never had an opportunity, just didn't work out that I was able to get in front of you, and I just wanted to say thank you for this opportunity. It's been the best job I've ever had. So, and that's just in the short few months I've been here. I started putting some numbers together, and I thought, well, I'm going to stand up here and I'm just going to rattle off some numbers because they have to be amazing. We have so much hardware in our athletic office from just this fall alone. And then I started putting our coaches' summaries together, and I thought, that's not going to do it justice. First of all, I want you to know that more than 350 of our students participated in fall sports alone. That's approximately 25% of our population. And I will be back in January to talk about all those students and what's going on with our activities. But I thought that was a significant number. Athletes, we're going to ask you too, if you're here in your sport and we're talking about you, if you would stand. I want to start with boys cross country. This is the best showing ever at the first to finish invitational this year, held at the state finals course in Peoria. The boys placed second overall. with Daniel Acapeti leading the way. This Kaneland crew raced to invitational championships at both levels in Freeport with 7 varsity runners. They also won the team title, the JV won the team title at the Byron Handicap. Our boys made history this year by earning their first conference team title in over 17 years. Our varsity team made history once again, earning the first team regional championship since 1995. We were lucky and fortunate to host the sectional at our campus. Once again, we won the sectional title, defeating Bennett by a total of 6 points in a field of 18 teams. In the state finals, our boys cross country won. Every single one of our runners posted a career best performance at the state final course. Daniel again raced to an all-state status when he crossed the line in 9th place at 15:06. It was the 18th all-state performance by our cross-country program. Kaneland missed a 3rd place trophy by just 1 point. And in cross-country, the IHSA only awards 3 state trophies, not 4. That means, respectively in time, that 0.16 seconds from 3rd and 2 seconds from a state runner-up finish. And what was impressive with our kids is that when they found out how close they had gotten, they acted like this is the best we could do. And clearly, by doing that, showing that every runner posted a best time. Their attitude was what we want to set the standard for. So again, I thank them for that. I thank their coaches for setting that tone. They had a fantastic, fantastic year. Thank you, guys. Our girls cross-country team started off strong by winning the Morris Early Bird Invite. Other seasonal highlights included 3rd place finishes at Waukegan and Freeport, as well as 5th place finish at our own Eddington Invite. The JV won 1st place at Waukegan, a 2nd place finish at Morris, and a 3rd place finish at the Freeport Pretzel Invitational. The varsity team placed 4th in the final conference meet, and the JV earned 2nd. Grace Purcell, Rachel Rickman, and Olivia Olivia Franklin ran to all conference. In the postseason, our girls qualified for the IHSA 2A state meet for the 4th consecutive year by placing 2nd at the Burlington Regional, 3rd at the Kaneland Sectional. This would be the 13th time in school history that our girls cross-country team had qualified for the IHSA state meet. And junior Rachel Rickman became the first Kaneland cross-country athlete to earn All-State 3 times when she placed 15th at this year's meet. Again, a fantastic job. We had 3 all-conference runners in Grace Purcell, Olivia Franklin, and Rachel Rickman. And a very significant piece that Coach Ecker wants me to share with you, 12 of our 15 junior and senior girls were named to either the 1st or 2nd team all-academic team. Nice. Significant contribution there. Thank you very much. Great job. I don't think any of our dancers are here, but I wanted to highlight them. Technically in the fall, it is an activity and not a sport. But we had a new coach. We had 10 athletes. We had a full squad this year. Mrs. Carter, Coach Carter, said they worked as solid as a team as they could ask for. They cut their own music. They taught their own new skills. They taught skills to each other. When they found that one of their teammates didn't know a skill that they did, the kids were teaching each other. They worked on and choreographed 2 parade routines, 3 football game routines, and a pep assembly routine just in the fall alone. The results of all this hard work was that each of the 6 fall performances were spectacular, and even though sometimes the weather wasn't. Yeah. We share that. Congratulations to our dance team. Just one more note about our dance team, too. We've already had kids asking about going to a competitive dance next year, which is a winter activity, because our numbers are growing with our dance program. Our football program, the varsity team had a great season this year. They were 7-4 overall, 6-3 in the regular season, including a 3-1 mark in the final year of the Northern Illinois Big 12 Conference. The varsity were co-champions of the East Side even though we had to share that with DeKalb and we beat DeKalb at homecoming. We did share that. The Knights were only one of 2 teams in the entire state to face 7 playoff opponents in their schedule this year. So it's not just about us winning titles, but it's about the competition that our coaches are scheduling for our young adults. Again, Coach Ryan wanted to highlight that no player, and we're talking about a lot of players in a football program from top to bottom, no player was ineligible during the entire course of the season. There are quite a few accolades for football. They do them by position, but we had an all-stater in Drew Hahn. We had academic all-state in Kyle Angelotti, Luke Grost, Zach Denning, and Joe Smith. We had several all-conference players at various positions. We had offense and defensive players of the year for our conference. And of course, our local newspapers also put out all area teams, and we were extremely well represented at those as well. So again, congratulations to Coach Ryan. We had 8 academic all-conference football players and 11 honorable mention academic all-conference football players. So again, a significant number getting it done in the classroom as well as on the football field. So congratulations to our football program. Our golf team. Now, are you starting to see how I couldn't just throw a couple of numbers at you? Yeah. It's the same theme, and it keeps getting better. Our golf team was 8-1 in dual match play over the course of the season. They were 3-1 in the Northern Illinois Big 12 Conference play. They placed second at the Plainfield Invite, second at Limestone, and second at Geneva. They then turned around and won the Sterling Invite. Then we got to the conference meet down in LaSalle at Seneca Oaks. Will Marshall shot a 63 at the conference meet. I was there that day, and every kid coming off the course knew exactly what Will Marshall had already shot. They weren't paying attention to their own game. They knew, they're like, seriously, where is this kid that shot a 63 today? And our Knights went on to win the conference meet by posting a 293 score. They shattered our previous record of a team score. So they not only won the conference, but set a school record there. Our varsity golf team would earn a regional title, and then they took 3rd place at the Kaneland Sectional, which we hosted at Hughes Creek. The 2018 Knights are only the 3rd team to advance to state in golf in school history. They placed 7th overall as a team at state, making it the best team finish, again, in Kaneland school history. Will Marshall would finish 5th individually at the state tournament, earning him all-state honors. He is the only Knight golfer in school history, according to Coach Meyer, to accomplish this feat. The future also looks bright for Kaneland golf. Cody Ganzen played as a member of the varsity state qualifying team. He was the top freshman finisher at the state meet this year. So congratulations to our golf team. New coaches for our sideline cheer for the fall. They're busy getting ready for competition. In fact, I can report to you that our cheerleaders, and many of them from the fall, carry over to our competition. They got 2nd this past, I guess yesterday, Sunday, at their very first competition of the year, so we're excited about that. But they started way back in June. They had tryouts actually in the spring. JV debuted their first ever JV-only homecoming routine that included cheers, stunts, and dance, in addition to performing halftime routines at the home games. Over the course of the summer, Coach Herring and the fall program was able to represent and support the community proudly in the Elburn Days Parade, the Dunk Tank fundraiser at Elburn Days, and the Kaneland Homecoming Parade, as well as several traveling assemblies. Many of the athletes are part of the program year-round, so we're very excited to see what they have to offer for the rest of the year. So congratulations to our cheer team. They're really working hard. In fact, our cheer program has expanded so much that I've already promised them I won't stick them in the balcony next year. We'll have to find them some different space that's a little bit bigger. So congratulations to our cheer program. Moving on to boys soccer. Our boys soccer finished 2nd in the final year of the conference. I think they tied with Yorkville. Is that correct, guys? Tied with Yorkville, even though we handily defeated Yorkville this season. They were 12-9-1 overall, and again went to the regional final, and eventually got beat by Marmion at the regional final. They went all the way to Wisconsin to participate in the Milton tournament. This is a very competitive tournament. It's invite only, and our guys came home as tournament champions. We had 6 all-conference selections this year: Alex Bass, Alex Dome, juniors Tucker Johns, Gavin Cano, and Tyler Chapman, as well as sophomore Evan Smith. And then Johns and Cano were also named all sectional players at the state level this year. And last, we just found this out about a week ago. Tucker Jans has been recently named to the All-State Insurance Inaugural High School All-American team. They only select 125 players from the entire country to participate in that, and he is one of them. So it's a very prestigious honor, but another good season for boys soccer. Wasn't kidding about all the trophies and hard work. Our girls tennis team, they ended the regular season 20-6. This is only the second girls tennis team ever to surpass, to have 20 or more wins. The other one was in 2014. Haley Plock and Evie Taylor combined to be the Northern Illinois Conference champions at the #2 doubles spot this year. Both Anna Carlson and Aaron McMullen were named all-conference at the 1 and 2 spot doubles as well, making half of our Knights all-conference tennis players. Overall, the team finished 4th at the conference tournament in Rochelle. The Knights then qualified 4 positions for the state tournament. Kaneland would win the sectional tennis meet with 23 points over Rockford Boylan's second closest team, who only had 12. During the IHSA Girls State Tennis Tournament, and let me just explain that at the State Girls Tennis Tournament, it is not one location. It's actually held in 12 different locations in the suburbs at 12 different schools. So imagine being Coach Larson and Coach Sunday trying to get to all of those. We actually sent some help with them. A couple other assistant coaches went with. But we had girls participating in 4 different locations. Our Knights this year would go on to finish 4th. They were 10th in 2017, but this year they were 4th. That is the highest in school history, according to Coach Larson. Maddie Jurasek finished tied for 12th overall as an individual and is likely to be named All-State again. Piper Shefferman tied for 5th place and again will be All-State for a second time. Piper's only a sophomore and has 2 more years left at Kaneland. So again, congratulations to our tennis team. Not only are we winning, but we're setting school records and we're placing higher than we ever have before. So congratulations to our tennis team. And last but certainly not least is our girls volleyball program. I think it's probably fitting that we talk about them last. As I'm sure you're aware, we had them spend an awful lot of time here in this building this year. Is that correct, Katie? Yeah. We did make it happen that they could have senior night in their new facility with all the new, with the bleachers and the floor and the lights and everything. But I think it's important when we start talking about everything that they've accomplished that we also take in part that they had to travel to harder. And again, thanks to Tom Hewells and everybody over here that made that happen for us so they could play their matches here. The varsity volleyball team broke the Kaneland High School record of 33-5 that was set back in 2016 by posting an overall record this year of 34-5 and a perfect 10-0 in conference play. 2 of those 5 losses, one was to eventual 3A state champion Sterling, and the other one was to the 4A third place finishing team. So again, our competition is extremely high. They started the season with a 6th place win or a 6th place finish at Wheaton North, but then earned 1st place at the Centennial Tournament in Champaign, beating Champaign Central, who would make it to the Elite 8 this year. They also earned 1st place at the Oswego Tournament and 1st place at the Woodstock Tournament before winning the regional and going all the way to the sectional final. Academic honorable mention all conference. Again, these are students who are 3.0 to 3.49. Katie Kramer, Lauren Steers, and Grace Vraniker, excuse me. We had academic all conference winners as well: Sydney Federley, Shelby Hanula, Maddie Muller, Ava Ullman, and Miranda Watson. Our all conference honorable mention included Grace Franz, and again, Grace Vranacker. Sydney Federley, Katie Jablowski, and Julie Vasallo were named all-conference to the first team all-conference. And Katie who's with us tonight, was also named Conference Player of the Year, and she was also a member of the All-Area team with Juliana. Katie went on to become the Chronicle Volleyball Player of the Year and has been nominated for All-State. We'll know that out a little bit later this month. So congratulations to our volleyball team as well. I can't leave without thanking Stephanie Douglas and Brian Aversa, and of course all the administrative team, including Mrs. Maris. As a new athletic director to a new school district, with all of that success and everything that took place, there's no way that it gets done by one or two people. It's an entire team. We try to obviously give you the best opportunity we can. I'm very proud to say that we were able to host sectionals for cross country. We were able to host playoff football. We've been awarded several other postseason events already, including regionals and super sectionals for softball. The IHSA is coming knocking on our door. They want us to host because they like how we do things here. And again, I think some of that credit has to go out to Peter Goff as well, because he set the tone in the last 4 years for the IHSA coming to our place. But congratulations to our athletes. A big thank you to our coaches as well. Very, very flexible and working with me and getting used to how we're going to work with each other as the new person. So again, I appreciate, thank you very much for letting us come in and talk about our athletes, and I can't wait to come back and talk about all our activities in January. Thank you.
Thank you.
If students, if you could come join us out here, we'd love to take your picture so we can get it up on social media.
Wow, it's quite full.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Yeah. Good night. That's their out.
Yeah, they're like, it's only students, but... Any others?
Nope, that was all I had.
Nothing else, right? All right, so we'll move on to public comment. I think the crew here knows the rules for public comment. And if you have one, if you could go to the microphone. We could wait for the door to close. There we go.
My name's Rainey Good, and I am the president of Kaneland Education Association. I also teach here 6th grade here at the Harder Middle School. KEA would like to thank the board for considering the purchase to replace teacher laptops. Computers are very important tools in the learning environment. The computers that we have now have been workhorses, so to speak. When the current laptops replaced our desktop computers, we were able to emerge from behind the desk and we've had more flexibility in our learning environment. However, in the last few years, our computers have not allowed as much freedom, especially midday or even earlier for some of us when the battery is exhausted. It is important for teachers to have the flexibility to move about the learning environment and not be tethered to a place where they must plug in to charge a dying battery. Teachers move about the classroom to work with students, to do quick formative assessments, to share resources and collaborate with students or groups of students. They no longer need to carry the physical clipboard to check off a learning target or write quick anecdotes about a student's progress, but we carry those laptops for that purpose. Teachers also move to other classrooms to collaborate with other colleagues. Some teachers and staff, such as PE teachers, are in large spaces like gyms or labs without a desk in sight. Others, like interventionists, instructional coaches, and counselors, see the benefit of a laptop since they move around throughout the day and are not in one space long enough to charge a laptop battery that has gone dead. So again, we appreciate your consideration for the possible laptops that will allow our staff to be effective in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? So we'll move on to the consent agenda. Tonight, the consent agenda consists of the following items: the approval of parameters for accounts payable and payroll December 2018, approval of treasurer's report November 2018, approval of minutes of the November 26, 2018 regular meeting, approval of resignations of employment of staff, approval of destruction of audio recordings from executive session May 2017, approval of 2017-18 audits, Kaneland District 302 and Fox Valley Career Center, approval of high school course handbook changes, approval of change order, and the following informational items: the student suspension data report, the Freedom of Information Act report, and the field trip notification. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
A second maybe from Ryan, and then, and then a roll call.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Mr. Lawler. Mrs. Pavlik.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
And Mrs. Junk.
Motion carries 7-0, and so we will move on to J1, public hearing and approval of 2018 tax levy.
Yes, thank you. I'll turn that over to Dr. Fuchs, and she'll
Okay.
walk us through the documents, and obviously you have the information for the public hearing.
Yep. Want me to get started?
Yep, thank you.
All right. So we will now open the public hearing on the 2018 property tax levy for the Kaneland Community School District 302 at 7:25 p.m.
And then I can outline the tax levy for you.
Perfect.
First of all, I wanted to remind the board that there have been no changes since the tentative levy was approved in October. Everything is the same. And so with that being said, specifically, we are levying for $46,975,000. Bond and interest is $11,696,790 for a total levy amount of $58,671,790. The page that we can focus on is page 3. It's the landscape with the table and the graphs in that. To remind everybody, last year's extension is on the first column, about 2/3 of the way down at $44.7 million. That was our capped extension. The maximum tax rates are listed in column 2. The maximum extensions are listed in column 3. And then based on the assumptions that we've used, remember that when we do this tax levy right now, it's based on assumptions. The assumptions will be finalized in March or April, and then that's why we built in a little bit extra, is in case if the assumptions are too low. The assumptions that we've used for this year's tax levy, we've used the 2.1% CPI. That's not an assumption, but that's a known number. The two assumptions then are how much new growth will we have? We've estimated that to be 7.4 million. And then secondly, how much will existing EAV grow? And we've estimated that to be 4%. I'm sorry, 4.4%. With that being said then, the next column over is the prorated extension. We can expect to receive approximately $46,991,000, depending on how those estimates come out. The manual override column is where I determine which funds need more money and then plan accordingly. This gives us room in case if the estimates are incorrect. And then lastly, those overrides become the levy amount. You can see our truth in taxation amount is 4.99%, which means we're underneath the required 5%. However, I did post the truth in taxation notice in the newspaper. It did post, and so we are well within the truth in taxation law. Our bond and interest is going up just slightly. This is the amount with the new refunding. So we did the bond refunding. This is the new amount. And then lastly, then our total levy for tonight is $58,671,799 or $790. There's a copy of the tax levy on the next page. There are 3 signed copies in the yellow folder for the board president and the board secretary to sign. I'll be filing the levy within the week, probably on Thursday, but maybe before. And then I have a secretary's certificate, and then also the truth in taxation certification.
Okay, so we'll move to the public hearing next, or the public comments, I should say. So we'll now invite the public comments on the proposed 2018 tax levy, keeping in mind the public comment guidelines stated earlier in the meeting, or we skipped because of you people, earlier in the meeting. The board does not generally respond to public comment at this time. Any discussion would usually take place after the hearing as the levy is discussed and adopted. So are there any public comments on the levy? No? Seeing none, that will close the public hearing at 7:29 p.m. And now I think we're open to discussion.
Looks like the amount of money that you're requesting in the retirement fund is a pretty healthy increase. Is there a short explanation? Going up almost 200,000, 180,000.
So, if you'll remember, and clearly, let me just remind you like you've asked, the IMRF fund and the Social Security fund, currently they have high fund balances. Last year, I started to bring them lower. I'm doing the same here, but it's little by little. I'm over levying. When we get to March and April, I'll be able to adjust those levy amounts based on any staffing reductions or additions that we do in the February meeting. So they won't end up being levied that high. They're going to be a little bit closer to where we are now.
Okay.
But we still want to bring those fund balances down, but we don't want to do it all in 1 year. You want to spread it out over time. If you don't spread it out over time, what it does is it'll make your tax rate in that fund jump significantly the year that you're not doing it. So if you bring it down little by little, then the tax rate catches up.
Okay.
And so I do have extra money in there right now until I know what staffing is going to be.
And the other thing is, it's important to point out that it doesn't matter what we ask for.
That is absolutely correct, Ryan. We could ask for 100 million and levy that full amount, but we are still only going to get what the law allows, and that's your CPI plus new growth, and that's it. I believe that number will be closer to the 46 million.
So
Which-
we're basically limited by the CPI. every
That's
year.
correct.
Okay.
Yep, and the
So-
new growth. And remember, your tax rates are going to decrease because your EAV is increasing. There's an inverse relationship between tax rate and EAV increases.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else?
Actually, it doesn't matter what we ask for, if you ask for less.
Okay.
Just saying.
Anything else? Okay, then I would like to entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve the 2018 tax levy as presented. So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? So move to a roll call.
Mr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Abstain.
Mrs. Sparber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
And Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Motion carries 601. And we'll move on to J2, approval of replacement of laptop computer purchase for staff.
Yeah, this is a follow-up conversation from our last Board of Education meeting, and Dr. Fuchs has some information to share regarding the recommended purchase.
Thank you. Also, Mr. Wolf is here if we have any further technical questions. We did spend a significant amount of time discussing this topic at the last board meeting. I've brought back to you the model, the 3390 that we talked about at length. The 5289 model is not available any longer in the quantity that we need. With that being said then, you can see the price difference. If we order this before January 1, we could save a potential of $74,000. I believe because the expenditure budget is running less than expected, that we should be able to fit it in there, but I don't want to promise that, but I believe that it will happen. To the best of our abilities, we'll encourage all of our administrators to continue to watch and monitor their budgets carefully. Then also, it is our intention to replace these laptops, one half of them in 2021 and one half in 2022, as the board's directed us to do. And that'll get us on a replacement schedule, and I have included that in tonight's financial projections. Are there any questions? I've included the technical specs as well on these laptops for your review.
So these are the more expensive ones, right?
No, these are the less expensive
The less
ones.
expensive ones, okay. Now, the January date was associated to the tariffs, right? Which have been pushed out 3 more months, right?
I don't know that answer.
If you,
The first part of the answer is yes, they're associated with the tariffs. Whether or not they've been pushed out, I'm not sure. However, there were also 2 other things that were causing it: the delay of the processors, and then also the rising interest rate market, which wouldn't make a difference now if the board is going to purchase rather than lease.
Any other comments, questions? So, on the replacement schedule, if there was some kind of, I mean, as usual, if there was some kind of economic downturn or recession or something, we can always revisit that replacement schedule. Like,
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm not saying we'll go into it with that in mind, but if something were to happen, we're not signing anything with a company that says we're going to buy this many from you in this many years. Okay.
No, nothing at all. It's just a plan.
Okay. Which is good to have.
And the 400 units that would be all that's needed?
Yes, it is at this time. It should give us a couple spares as well
Okay.
for when things break and things.
Anything else? And what's the battery life on this one was significantly better than what they have now?
Yeah.
Just trying to,
Yes, because they're failing.
Yeah.
Brand new battery, yes.
In addition, is there also a
About 6 hours.
technological increase?
6+, depends what kind of power saving modes they use on it. So
Okay.
dim the screen and so on. Yeah.
Okay.
Do they receive like memos on the best way to do power saving modes like that?
When we handed out the last round of laptops, we went through just basic training of how to use it and features and things like that, and we'll do the same with this as we distribute them. So.
You guys some deeper thoughts? Or you guys, no? just looking down. All right. Finding my motion. So I move that the Board of Education approve the purchase of 400 Dell 3390 laptop computers prior to January 1st, 2019. Is there a second?
Second.
Additional question, or should the recommendation or the motion include the price? Not to exceed? Not to exceed, are you fine doing not to exceed 300,000?
This is the price without shipping, because I wanted to compare apples to.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a final price, it's not going to shift?
Oh,
Is that what?
that's correct. This is the price with shipping, plus
Okay.
shipping. Sorry.
Yeah.
So are you,
So
so should we have
should we
the
say?
Board of Education approve the purchase of the 400 Dell 3390 laptop computers prior to January 1st, 2019 at a price of
Yes,
$296,412. I believe that's without shipping.
correct.
It's probably better. You could say plus shipping, so that.
Could do that
plus
too.
shipping covers all of it. Thank you. I believe probably whoever seconded is fine with that, yeah. All right, any discussion?
Thank you for doing all this work and investigating it for us and showing us the cheaper one.
And showing up in the
You're welcome,
blizzard?
and I'm happy to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
All right, no roll call?
Mrs. Pavlik?
Aye.
Mr. Rivas?
Aye.
Mrs. Sparber?
Aye.
Mrs. Witt?
Aye.
Mrs. Junk? Mr. Carey?
Aye.
Mr. Lawler?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. We'll move on to J3, financial projection presentation.
Yep, annually in December, it was either Mike Francis from Forecast 5 or 5Cast would come, or PMA, come and do the presentation for us each year, but as they've transitioned to a different business model, it's now ours to be able to run and do, and just so that you know, in the past, even though Mr. Francis would come and help us out with this, Julianne was still doing the majority of the inputting of the information. So we'll turn it over to Julianne, and she will share exactly what Mike would have shared if he was here tonight. So, Dr.
That's
Fuchs.
correct. Thank you. Now what happened? Not on purpose. Let me see. Oh, there it goes. Okay. You're surprising me. I'm like, what is going on? So we still have the model and the software, which is ever so powerful. Additionally, you can see the various components or the various tasks that can be completed with the model and the financial projections. We have developed the 5-year financial plan. We can do scenario comparisons, and that's going to be extremely important this year in particular as we estimate large expenditures. We can also do detailed budget and performance analyses. You can do budget preparation and upload it to the system, our other accounting system, SDS. And then lastly, we can create excellent reports with this system. And so you'll be able to see some of the reports tonight that I've generated from the system. As we go through the different financial elements, you need to know that we put actual data in there from the audit. That's why we do this presentation in December, is because we wait for the final audited numbers. That way we know what we're dealing with from the prior fiscal year. We put all of the revenues, expenditures, and fund balances in there. I've got this year's current budget in there from our general ledger. The tax levy that you passed tonight, that information is in there. All the extensions, rates, the EAB, our enrollment, and then all of our district assumptions. Let's start. There are two sides to the pie that we need to talk about. The first side, of course, are the revenues. The large green portion of the pie makes up of the district's property taxes. You can see that a significant portion comes, about 73% of our budget, from property taxes. Again, in Kaneland, we're very thankful for that because we know that our property taxes are a dependable source of revenue. We have some other local revenue. That would be your school fees and lunch fees. 12% comes from the evidence-based funding model, which is from the state of Illinois. Please remember that used to be called General State Aid or GSA. The other state revenue, that's the reimbursement we get for transportation and for special education. You get a little bit of money, about 2% in federal revenue. Those are your title grants. And then we have a very small amount of flow-through revenue. It's showing 0 because it's not significant. So those are the significant data inputs of our revenue model. Then as we start to talk about the assumptions, let me tell you how the assumptions work so that you can, when we get to the end and you see the results, you can know what has gone into them to create the results. So and these are the same assumptions that the board discussed in September at length. So the first assumption is, what are we going to use for CPI? As you know, just like we did tonight with the tax levy, the CPI is a significant part of the formula that generates revenue for the district, and the tax levy generates about 73% of all revenue. So that CPI number is pretty important. The dark numbers represent actuals. The light numbers represent the assumptions that are used in the model. The one assumption that I want to point out, first of all, we've used 1.8%. That's about the average for the last 5 years. However, that 1.8% in 2019, it is currently trending at about 2.6%. The final number will be available in January, around January 10th, and we'll have to see where it comes in. If it comes in higher, that's the nice part about the model, is I can go in, change it, and you can immediately see the updated numbers. The rest of the years then at this point will remain the same at 1.8, but if we get another or a third year of CPIs over 2%, we might want to bump up the next few years, but you can see we've had some pretty low CPIs, so at this point, my recommendation is to keep them at 1.8, be conservative. You can always add money, but if you've overestimated, it's difficult to readjust. So it's a give and a take on the revenue side. The next significant assumption that we estimate is our new growth. If you'll remember in the levy, the formula takes out the new growth on the denominator, which allows for a larger tax rate. The new growth is only for the first year that those properties are on the tax rolls. After the first year, those properties roll into the existing EAV, and the next year's new growth goes on there. At this point, the 2018 is still an estimate. That estimate will become finalized in March and April. Remember when I was talking about the levy, we built the levy on estimates. This is still an estimate until March or April. Again, we used to use 5.5 million. This year we've bumped that up to 6 as an estimate because as you can see from our trend, the dark green lines, they continue to go up, 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 up. So we want to increase our estimate and plan for the future accordingly. Again, being conservative, but nonetheless, trying to find the sweet spot, for lack of a better word. Aaron?
Dr. Fuchs, how do you calculate the estimate for 2018?
I get estimates from the county clerks, both DeKalb County and Kane County. And then the thing that you have to be careful of are tax objections. We don't know how many people are going to object and when. So you you look at the estimate and throw a dart. But that's why we do the manual override column, is to build in any extra so that we don't under levy.
Sure. Okay.
So.
Thank you.
You bet. So the good news is you can calculate a sensitivity. So on the tax levy, if, for example, that CPI is too low, that 1.8, say it happens to become 2.8, a full point higher, that will bring in an additional $460,000 in new monies. But if you're wrong by 1% and it drops, you could lose that much. So that's your sensitivity. 1% equals approximately $460,000. Similarly, on the new property growth, approximately every $1 million, up or down, is about $55,000. So there's not quite so much change in that amount as there is. You can see how important that CPI is, and we keep an eye on that all the time. In the model then, at this point, I've kept all other revenues the same as this current year. The significant ones would be your CPPRT, your corporate personal property replacement taxes. Each year we get about $255,000 on that. Sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower, but it's not enough like the tax levy to swing the budget. Your other local revenue, I've kept all of that the same at this point in time as well. State revenue. This year, again, this is the second year of our evidence-based funding. You can see that we got a little over, or we're planning on getting a little over 6.8 million on the evidence-based funding. Our base funding was about 6.7. We got additional $144,000 because we're tier 2, and I'll explain that in just a minute. We did get a small ELL supplemental grant for the total EBF funding. With regard to evidence-based funding, or EBF, I am planning a presentation in January to go through more details of that. The board has asked for that information, and so I'll be sharing that with you in January. But for the purposes of tonight, for this model, I've kept all the EBF amounts the same because we have a hold harmless amount for 3 years, and next year would be the 3rd year. And at this point, it's difficult to estimate how much new money would be brought in by the tiers because we won't know that until the legislature passes its budget. So there's a lot of variability in that number to be counting on it. Again, we have to be pretty sure on our projections, so you want to be careful with how much you count for revenue.
Is it possible that might go down in some of those, so we're doing a 5-year forecast, that it might actually go down?
It is possible. I'm waiting to see. The committee has not met yet, but there's a review committee that's supposed to meet. And what I'm curious about is how they will adjust after the 3-year hold harmless period is over. The reason I'm so curious is because our enrollment has continued to decline. Under the old general state aid model, when enrollment went down, so did those resources because you don't need as much because you don't have as many kids. And so I'm waiting to see what the committee decides, but I do know that we have 1 more year at the hold harmless level.
Okay.
Is that the same time that they'll reevaluate what tier you're at? Do they change?
They reevaluate that every year.
That's every year?
Yep, and that's based on the percentage of adequacy and then where you fall in the chart. And again, I can give you more depth or details on that in January. So I didn't want to confuse both presentations because this here could be its own, and it will be. Yep. Other state categorical grants, as I mentioned, the transportation and the special ed, I kept those the same, and same thing on the federal amounts. So, again, those are the assumptions that we've used to build the model for revenue. So if any of those things change, the numbers that I'm sharing with you would change accordingly. Are there any questions at this time on any of the revenue assumptions? Okay, let's go to the other side of the pie, and that's the expense side, or the expenditure budget. Our FY19, that's this year expenditure budget, is $59.4 million. And you can see, again, the pie is divided up. This one is by object. Salaries and benefits make up a significant portion of that at about 71%, which is interesting because that number almost always is close to our property tax number. Somewhere in the 70s to 75 to 80, it just depends on how much other monies we're getting. Purchase services is 13%, that's the orange. The largest amount in that is our custodial contract because we purchase those services. Supplies and materials at about 6%, and then the light blue is the other objects, and underneath of it in parentheses I put tuition. That would be your Fox Valley Career Center tuition and any tuition for students with special needs. Those are all coded to a 600 or other objects. The pie chart that I'm showing you, if you look at the bottom, only includes the operating funds. Education, OM, operations and maintenance, transportation, and working cash. So again, these that I'm going to go through next are the key expenditure assumptions. If any of these assumptions change, the bottom line will change. The projections will change. Okay? So as I've done in the past, if we don't know what a salary increase is, I've put in a 0% because that gives you a pure number at the end of how much money the board has available in which to distribute if it chooses to do so. We do know that the SPEAK contract is settled for 3 more years. I have put those percentages in the model because they're known. That's what we do. If we know a number, we put it in. If we don't know, for salaries, we use 0. I do know that 1% of all salaries is approximately $345,000. I also know that currently we have continued to support educators as they get more education. By doing so, we put in about $100,000 each year for them to move over lanes. At this point, I have put in no changes to the staffing. So when you see the bottom line, if we reduce teachers or staff, you would have more money to spend. If you add teachers or staff, you would have less money to spend. The bottom line that I'll be showing you, again, is a pure number with no changes, just these assumptions.
Is the number that we use for still 50,000 that we use for?
You know what? It's on the next page, or in a couple pages, and it's 45,570.
Oh, okay.
Yep. The 50,000 includes a little bit of money for the bennies.
Okay.
Yep.
Which is smart.
Yep. So health benefits, speaking of benefits, each year I put in 5%. One year I dropped it to 4%, and that didn't work well for me because it went to 6%. So I'm going to stick with 5% and hope it comes in at 3%. So, because that's always a good day when you get a lower amount than that. That's a pretty significant number. The district's contribution to the employees' health insurance program is almost $7 million. So it's a big shift when you get 1 or 2%. Purchase services at the bottom there. We build in the annual increases for the custodial contract. We bid that contract, so we have the lowest pricing available, and there's a 3% built into it. Additionally, we build in 5% annually for special ed tuition increases. And that could cover either new students or the tuition at other schools increasing. But we have to make sure that we have enough money there. Similar to special ed transportation, if you remember from the audit, that was one that we hadn't budgeted enough for last school year. And then if we go to the next page, that first section is a repeat from the bottom of the previous, but then there's another section labeled supplies, capital outlay, and other. These are the other assumptions that we talked about in September. I want to give you an update on that. So the school buses are in there at the same amount that they are this year, and that's approximately 5 replacement buses. If we can keep that up, our fleet won't be getting too far ahead or too far behind. Curriculum, if you'll recall, their budget had been reduced quite a bit. It started at $400,000, and then in 18-19, that's this year, it's only $250,000. So in the recommendation in September, when I gave you when we talked about assumptions, our recommendation was to get that back up to the full $400,000. So beginning in 1920, I put that $150,000 back in there, and it's recurring, meaning that it will stay there year after year. Similarly, we're going to be talking about one-to-one in just a little bit, and one of the questions is what about the money that we currently use for fees? We need to use it for we may need to use it for Chromebooks. So for technology, I put in an additional $100,000 beginning in 1920. And again, that will recur year after year. So that'll be important because we may need some additional support there. Again, this is not a budget. These are projections. And we can do whatever we need to do at any time to see what if. The teacher laptop replacement, I've got that built in as a one-time purchase. So that one doesn't recur year after year like the others. That one I've got, and per the board's recommendation, purchase 1/2 in 1 year and 1/2 in another. I put in $225,000. That'll give us $450,000. I'm thinking 3 years down the road, laptops may be higher, they may not, but I want to make sure that we've planned for it this time because we don't want to have to do it all in 1 year, and we don't want to have to do it in the middle of a year like we are now. We want to plan for it. Next page. Here are some other assumptions that I've put in or have assumed. I've assumed no change to the P-TEL or the tax cap. But please know, every legislative session, we do have legislators who propose bills that freeze the tax cap. And so I'm going to show you in a minute how devastating a tax cap freeze would be to Kaneland. It is cumulative and it's fast over time. So we'll look at that in just a minute. As you all know, the state is having problems with the pension system. If for some reason they push that cost onto the districts, this obligation is not included. If they did a 1% shift, which we don't know what they would do, but this will give you an idea of what would happen if, it would be about $267,000 per 1%. So if they shifted it, we would need to find that money, and then the next year we would have to put it into the projections and plan. These projections include 25 known retirements over the next 4 years. So when we're all said and done, you don't want to raise your hand and go, well, what about retirees? We're going to save money. Yes, we are. I know we are, and it's built into the model. Okay? And you say, well, what are we replacing them with? Teresa, that's your question.
Yeah.
At this point, we've got BA Lane Step 5 with a salary of about $45,570. That works pretty well for us.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm going to object to the use of the word step.
Yes. Okay.
BA Lane with
5 years,
5
of
years
experience.
Okay. Just,
Yep. Thank you for the clarification.
Sorry.
I apologize. And then lastly, this model assumes that the FY19 budget is accurate. And of course, I will give you at some point the final numbers of how we did last year, and you'll see the trend over time that usually we're pretty close, sometimes closer than others, but always in the high 90% with regard to how close we were. So let's take a look at that effect of the tax cap. So the blue assumes that we just carry on with the tax cap law as is. The orange assumes that we have a property tax freeze, which is freezing the CPI and not allowing for it. If that tax freeze happened in 2 years, 2019 and 2020, the next 2 possible years, we would see the effect in 2021, and we would lose out on about $833,000. As I mentioned, it's a cumulative effect. So the next year you would have lost $2.5 million. It jumps to $4.264, and then a little over $6 million. Again, a tax cap freeze for this district that relies on property taxes for over 73% of its budget would be devastating. So we keep an eye on that just to make sure we know what's happening. All right, so then you say, okay, that's a lot of information and a lot of assumptions. What does it all mean? This is what it means. This is the chart, and I apologize for you that don't have a larger copy of it, and I've got a couple extra up here. We will look in the middle row. The middle row is your surplus/deficit row. If you'll recall, we have balanced our budget this year, so that's a good thing. We're showing a surplus of a little over $378,000. We did that because we cut $1.5 million for 2 years in a row, a total of $3 million over the last 2 years. That's how we were able to balance the budget this year. By doing so, you can then see that all of the projections are positive moving forward. And if you look at the red line on the next page, it shows your fund balance, the red line, going up. What's the most important piece of information about that red line going up at this point in the financial projections?
Anyone?
It does not include any salary increases except for those SPEAK members.
Got it,
okay?
But you keep separating salary and benefits, but if we don't have the employee, we don't pay the benefits. So do you get 5% built in for benefits?
That is true,
Okay.
because of health insurance
Right, well, I know.
for the employees that are here.
Yep.
Okay, so each year the board says to me generally, well, what if? And so this year, what I've done is I've prepared a what-if scenario. And I want to share that with you at this time so that you can see the difference. This, because it's been a long time since I've showed you a 5-year projection with positive fund balances. We've had to work really hard to get out of the negative.
Sorry, Dr. Fuchs, I don't mean to cut you off, but that surplus, that money's spoken for though, right?
It's only spoken for if you give out raises to all of the employee groups. The only money that's spoken for in there are the raises that I've budgeted. Remember the assumptions? I've got the speak assumptions in there because they're known. Everything else is zero. Okay. Now, if you look at page 17, what I've done here is I said, what if we were to give 2.5% salary increases for all staff all years of the projections, except for speak because we built those actuals in there. This is what would happen. Take a look at your surplus and deficit line, your row, I should say. You've got 3 years of positive, a year of negative, a positive, and a negative. Those numbers are cumulative. At any point that you change the prior year, it affects the following year. And then take a look at the next page. The red line on the next page shows you what 2.5% would do. This is about as close as I could get to giving you a picture that maintains your current fund balance. If you spend more than that, your fund balance will go down. If you spend less than that, your fund balance would increase.
And we're currently right at the 45 days?
No, we're actually a little higher at the end of June 30th. I just did that numbers, and I believe we were around 50 days, 52 days on June 30th. Because our fund balance went up this year. From last year. Last year it went down about $4 million. I actually brought that with me, I can tell you in a moment. And then this year I think it went up 1.8 million, so I believe it's at 52 days. Let me just grab that. I'm pretty sure that's what those are.
Standard & Poor's and the state and those recommend 90 days, right?
Yeah, 90 is the
So we're-
recommendation.
While we're over our policy, we're still behind the best practice.
I would agree. Yeah, we were at 52 days, June 30th. This is from the audit. And then our fund balance went up about 1.8 million, whereas last year it went down 4.5 million. Last year was just a rough year because we only got 3 payments. And then this year we got that extra, or 17, 18, we got that extra payment. And so it has fluctuated with the state.
How did you say the capital projects fit into this? I think you said they were excluded from this, is that true?
I forgot to put that on the chart. The capital projects are built into the model as is, about 600,000.
About 600,000.
Mm-hmm. That should have been on that page with the school buses. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yep.
So maybe this is a long way to get somewhere, but we spend all of the money that we take in, give or take. I mean, the fund balances the last few years has fluctuated a little bit, but relatively constant. So if you give us an assumption with salary increases of 2.5%, but we go back to the revenue assumptions and we're only assuming a 1.8 increase in, we're redistributing funds within the model. So that means it's going to salary and coming from buses or something. Is that a fair statement?
I don't think so because the majority of the levy will go to the ed fund because we'll put in the ed fund what we need. Because now, remember, the ed fund does not have that $4 tax limit, you can levy what you need into the education fund. No longer do you need to over levy in transportation and move it. The law changed.
Let me try again.
Okay.
I don't think, you answered a question, but it wasn't the one I was trying to ask.
Okay, keep going then.
All right, so we're only gonna get $100 for the sake of discussion, and we're assuming that $100 is increasing at 1.8% a year.
Okay,
But we're projecting salaries at 2.5% a year. So salaries is getting bigger as a percentage of the pie.
I would agree with that statement. The only thing that you have to take into consideration is that in addition to the CPI, you also have to add in that
Fair
new
enough.
growth.
Right.
So it's a hair over.
I would rather see a model that doesn't redistribute the funds, because that's what this is doing. It's taking it from somewhere and putting it into salaries.
Okay, I can show you that model. What number do you want me to use? And I'll bring that back in January.
Keep the pie the same, is that what you're saying? If
Yeah,
you did a new-
basically.
I think he's saying if you did a new pie in 2024 and those percentages shifted, then he's concerned if that was the intentional. It might be interesting to look at the pie in 2024. You know what I'm saying? And see if it moves.
So you want to look at the expenditure pie
Keep it constant.
in 2024 and make sure that the percentages are similar to 2019, which is what I've shown you tonight.
Correct. So if you're going to increase, revenues are going to go up 1.8. Don't assume salaries going up at 1.8 so that the pie stays relatively the same. Please.
Okay.
And that would keep it so that we wouldn't see the deficits in 2022 and 2024. Is that true then?
I would agree with that.
Okay,
And then it would also show higher surpluses in the other years,
okay.
is what that's going to do. And how much? By every percent that I change CPI, about 460,000.
No, I would. Sorry.
And right now, we're at about 0.8 because I've got 1.8% built in. And if you do a 0.8, that's 2.6. And I'm sorry, we're at about a 0.7 because I've got 2.5% built in. So then 0.7 of 460,000 is probably about 340,000.
You
give or
lost me
take.
in your mental math there.
That's how you got yours.
Sorry.
I get that.
All right,
Yep, go ahead and ask the question. I was trying to help Aaron.
sorry, were you done? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was piggybacking on you, Ryan. So you go.
No, it's
I'm good. I followed you, so we're good.
Thank you.
If I wasn't suggesting changing the revenue assumptions,
Correct.
just
You want to change the pie chart for the expenditure assumption. You want me to make sure, is that the expenditure? Yes. You want me to make sure that at whatever percentage I increase salaries, that it stays at about 58% and 13%.
that's where we're not on the same page. What I'm suggesting.
Really?
Yeah, I think. I'm not worried so much about the chart as the 1.8%. Well, I guess I am. I'm sorry.
And you're
I'm
thinking
getting lost.
CPI. You're thinking
Yeah.
all these things might increase proportionately.
Yeah, I guess